Patience. That's the advice Jim Southen would give to a congregation that is struggling with its attendance. Well, patience and finding a connection to the community. Jim is the clerk of session at South Park Presbyterian Church in Charleston, West Virginia. Having started in his role in 1967, Jim has been involved in church leadership there for 50 years. In that time, he has seen the congregation peak in worship attendance to over 100 in the late 1960s, and then dip to single digits by the early 2000s.
The community that we're in is very poor, very, very depressed. Through the 40s and 50s, even the 60s, the church had a large membership, had a large number of children attending. There was a grade school located in the community. Within the community, it was mostly made up of blue-collar workers. No professionals lived in the communities during that time. It was all blue-collar workers. They worked in the plants and the factories, like the glass plant, the bottle plant, carbide, the chemical industry, those types of plants. The church began to see a decline in membership as those plants began to close and children grew up and moved out of the community, and especially when the grade school left the community. At that time, it was not unusual to have 100 to 120 people in church or Sunday school on a Sunday morning. In the early 2000, the membership was down to 17, and at one time it was well over 100 to 120, okay? But it was down to about 17. Church services on Sunday morning, we had somewhere on an average of about 7 to 8 individuals. That included the pastor and the pianist.
By 2005, South Park Church was at a crossroads. It was in a yoked ministry with nearby Westminster Presbyterian Church, but the 20-80 split didn't give South Park much more than a minister on Sunday mornings, leaving things like visitation and many other pastoral roles to leadership, like Jim. A merger was proposed that would combine South Park, Westminster, and Village Chapel Presbyterian churches, and a vote between the three congregations was held. It was agreed upon that all three congregations would have to vote in agreement of the merger in order for it to pass. South Park and Village Chapel both voted favorably for the merger, but Westminster was against it.
So then from South Park, it came down to, well, where do we go from here?
A short time after the vote, the pastor who was serving South Park and Westminster resigned, leaving the two congregations looking for a new leader. After 2 years of searching, Devin DeShano was hired and helped change the thinking and culture at South Park Church.
She pretty much hit the ground running. Devin was full of energy. She was a hard worker, not afraid to work. She had all these great ideas. It was more than just a service on Sunday morning and pastoral care. She really wanted to do things, and she immediately began to talk about transformation. She had read a lot of books about transformation of churches, how churches could be transformed, and she was very, very excited about that.
One of Devin's first ideas was to create a community block party. The first year, close to 150 people showed up for food, fun, and games.
We said, well, we need to do something for the community here. The community needs to know where we're at. You know, it's got to be more than, well, the doors are open on Sunday morning. You know, if the doors are open, it's hard for people to come across that threshold, you know, when they haven't been churched all their life. And so we said, we got to get outside the church wall. That's what Devin said. We have to get outside the church walls. That's part of transformation. Get outside the church wall. We're just living inside the church walls. We're just taking care of ourselves, and slowly, one by one, we're dying off. So we decided to have this community block party, and I would say that's where the transformation actually began. We had a needs assessment. We had a form for people to fill out. We asked if they would take the time to fill a form out and basically tell us, what do you see the needs are in this community? You know, what are the things that you would like to see the church be doing here in the community of South Park?
Seeing that there was a need for South Park and Westminster to be ingrained in the Charleston community, a small church development grant was acquired from the Presbytery of West Virginia to hire half-time outreach minister Mark Wannell, who continued to build upon South Park's community involvement. South Park then decided to pay the other half of Mark's salary, giving him full-time status and the ability to spend those other 20 hours a week working exclusively with South Park.
So South Park said, we're willing to put up $16,000. We're willing to step out in faith here, put up $16,000 if that person's willing to take on another half-time relationship, just working at South Park.
Children quickly became the focus of the new mindset at South Park Church. Every month, an activity for youth was planned, many times revolving around an event that is occurring that month, like Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and the 4th of July. Among the highlights was a community Easter egg party and a fall festival in October, each of which has drawn between 85 and 100 people.
Many of these people come, but they don't come to church. And you know, you have people who say, well, why do we keep doing this? They don't come to church. And it's not about numbers that come to church. It's about going out, providing a service, ministering to those within the community. We got to the point where we were starting to build relationships with people in the community, and we really liked that. And we were beginning to build relationships with people down at the park where we would have many times the activities for the children. And we would hear people say, what does these people want? Why do they do this? And Susan, one of our other elders, she would just say, because we love the children. You know, we love the children. We want to tell them about Jesus.
As interest in these programs grew, South Park continued to create new events for the community. Among them was a ladies' spa day, a women's fellowship group that meets at a local shelter, a Father's Day cookout, a monthly ecumenical men's fellowship, and an addiction recovery program. South Park also started a food pantry and a Thanksgiving food basket initiative, as well as assisting with a furniture ministry and providing worship at a local nursing home.
Once a week we would meet at the church and we would just pray. We would just pray for God's guidance. We would pray for God tell us what it is that He wants us to do in the community. We would pray for God to let us know what it is that He would like for us to do and how we are to do that. It wasn't just prayer sessions to say, well, God, bring us more money. God, bring us more people. It was basically, what is it that you would have us to do? And then after those prayer sessions, we would actually take what Devin would refer to as a prayer walk. We would walk down the road in the community, or we'd walk up the road in the community. And if we would see someone, we would just stop and chat with them. And many times during those conversations, the folks knowing that you were from church, they'd just say, well, I have a sister that's ill, or I have a mother that's quite ill, or I have so-and-so's had a heart attack. Can you remember them in prayer? Well, Devin or one of the other elders, we would have prayer right there with them. So we got to the point where we were starting to build relationships with people in the community, and we really liked that.
Despite the various outreach events, South Park was still not seeing an increase in attendance at its Sunday morning worship service. It took some time before someone came to church who learned about it through one of the community activities.
It had been so easy to have given up or quit, but we didn't. And in August of 2010, some 7-8 months later, the first person came through the church door, and that was a mother with 2 of her boys. They came to church. And ever since then, it's just been a slow process, but we continue to build relationships with people in the community through these outreach activities.
When Westminster decided it did not want to renew Devin's contract, South Park decided to break its yoke with Westminster in order to keep Devin on its staff for another year. One of the last things Devin did before leaving her position early in 2011 was bring back Vacation Bible School to South Park. Missing from its regular rotation of programs for 30 years, the yearly attendance for the summer event has steadily grown, getting as many as 60 children and adults to attend.
Devin wanted to have Vacation Bible School, and of course that's a lot of work, takes a lot of people, and she was able to find a church in Minnesota that was willing to come down on a mission project for the first year, come down as a mission project and conduct Vacation Bible School. There were 18 individuals that came out of Minnesota, and I believe it was 18, could have been 17, whatever, came down, conducted Vacation Bible School, and while they were here, we also did a couple community projects. We roofed one person's house who, every time it rained, they had water leaking everywhere in various rooms, and we roofed the house and we put a deck on another house.
To keep the youth engaged at other times throughout the year, a children's choir and a service led entirely by youth were created. And in every instance, the congregation made sure to include a snack or other food element to any activity that involves youth. With Devin resigning, South Park was looking for a replacement. With the guidance from the church's session, Mark was named the new pastor at South Park in 2011. His passion for children's ministries and community outreach continued in his new role as he helped start a tutoring program. He also recognized the importance of the Presbytery of West Virginia's Bluestone Camp.
started our outreach program in 2010, we pretty much let it be known when we were having the monthly events, especially when we met at the playground, we would talk to parents, that we, the church, were willing to pay to sponsor for a child to go to Bluestone Camp in the summer if they wanted to go. And we didn't put any limit on the number, just any child that wanted to go. It didn't make any difference if 1 or 2 or 10 or how many. We were willing to send them to Bluestone Camp and pay the cost. Now, some people will say, well, what if you have 10, 15, or whatever? How are you going to pay for that? We just said, God will provide. We just trust God. We're going to step out in faith. If we have these kids that want to go, we're going to send them. We want to get them off the street. So many adults will tell you that things began to turn around when they went to church camp, that was a turning point in their life.
The first year, no children accepted South Park's offer to go to Bluestone Camp. By 2015 and then again in 2016, 15 youth were sent each year to Bluestone, with all but $100 of the total cost coming from donations.
We always kind of looked at it as like fishes and loaves. God did provide, and He has always done that. You need to pray as to what it is that God is asking you to do. What is it that God wants you to do in terms of ministry? What is it that God wants you to do in providing service? You need to pray in earnest, and God will let you know. And the other thing is you got to get rid of the word can't. If you're sitting around a session meeting and somebody says, well, we need to send a couple kids to church camp this summer, quite often somebody's going to say, where are we going to get the money? You know, we don't say where we're going to get the money. We say, how are we going to get the money and how do we do this? And that's where God is in the mix. God helps us to say, to eliminate the word can't.
In 2013, Mark resigned, but with the guidance of spiritual leader Susan Seitz, Debbie and Robert Schultz were called to South Park, and they have continued to build on the vision and commitment to the community of the former church leaders.
The church was truly blessed to get both of them to come, and our ministry and our outreach program has really flourished under their leadership. Devin sort of planted the seeds, and Mark watered, and Debbie and Bob have continued to water and grow the ministry, essentially.
Today, attendance has increased at South Park Church. What once was a struggling congregation with just 7 or 8 people worshiping on a Sunday morning has grown into one that averages about 35, which includes a dozen or more children.
God has helped us, and how's God in this? He has helped us to show us how to get outside the church walls. You have to get outside the church walls. You cannot stay inside the church walls and expect to grow and do ministry. Eventually what's going to happen, you're going to die off one by one, and the church is going to die. We feel it's all about building relationships. You have to build the relationships. If you can't build the relationships, you're not going to get the people to come through the doors or get the ability to talk to them about Jesus or God. We don't see this as something that we've done or we've accomplished. This is something that God has done. God gives us the tools to do what we do. And we give God all the credit for everything that has happened at South Park. And we say all the time that God has truly blessed the congregation at South Park. Whenever there has been a need, that need has been met.